Hey guys, this is Jesse from Project FDL. This is part 2 of a 2-part assembly video. In part 1, we assembled the front of an FDL2X blaster and we started in on a little bit of the back portion of the blaster, but we stopped at the point where things start becoming different between a 2 Plus and a 2X. This particular video, we're going to carry on building this blaster as a 2X, and then I'll do a different video that will conclude a different blaster build as a 2 Plus. But for right now, let's continue out the back of the blaster and then we can get the two halves put together and finish assembling this FDL2X. So in the last video, we put together a portion of this rear plate. And we also prepped your handle. We got the trigger button in there, we got the pusher motor attached to this, the 2 limit switches, so now we're going to start building the rest of it. Okay, so at this point, you want to grab your trigger wiring button. On the 2X, this is a short wire piece with a 5-pin connector on one side and a 2-pin connector on the other with 2 yellow wires. This piece will fit inside this slot on the side of the rear plate, and you want to orient it so that the 2 yellow wires are facing towards the front of the blaster. So that just slides in from the side. Like that, and kind of just hangs out there for a second. This green limit wire on the back of here, the same as we saw on the handle, there is a tab that you run the wire underneath. So you want to try to get this wire underneath that tab. We got that. Now, you grab your PCB mount. The PCB mount looks a little bit like this. So this is basically 2 towers that your PCBs slide into, and then the pusher motor is in the middle, and this makes up the entirety of the electronics in the back of the blaster. So this mounts on top of the rear plate. You want to get your motor wire, that yellow wire, and your green rear pusher switch wire all inside of the square that makes up this PCB mount. And then the PCB mount mounts into place with 4 3/8 machine screws. What you want to be careful of is that when you mount this PCB mount, it doesn't squeeze on this green wire, so I like to hold it in place with my thumb right there and then put the screws in. Okay, once you get those in place, you want to get some of the wires kind of out of the way. If you look at the front of the PCB mount, there's 2 slots in the mount that you feed wires through. So I'm going to go ahead and take this gray wire and feed it through the slot on the left side of the blaster. This gets it kind of up and out of the way of the pusher. Go ahead and grab your 2 side plates. So the left side plate has a little bit of a gap here, and that is the gap that the trigger wire runs through. The right side plate does not have that, it's just flat with that little bit of a divot in the front. So we start by screwing this onto the left side of the rear plate, and this is all 3/8 machine screws. Okay. And then your handle mounts to that side plate. There is an opening at the bottom of the side plate here that you feed the wire from your trigger through. And then the handle mounts to the bottom 2 screws on that side plate. In your bundle, you'll find a small pin connector that makes a right angle. So this goes into the connector on the trigger wire, and then it goes into the very last 2 openings on this yellow wire that you inserted before. So you plug that in and then kind of tuck your wire in place here. And then we will go and we'll put the right side panel on. Again, this mounts with all 3/8 machine screws. All right, and then we can go ahead and we can mount the side caps that go on the side plates. This particular build, we did a little bit of customization on these caps. The customer wanted the name of the blaster to be Ghost, so we went ahead and we put Ghost on the side of either of these. And like the side panels, these mount with 3/8 machine screws. So now that you have the back portion of the blaster and the front portion of the blaster pretty well put together, we're going to assemble the two together. So what we're going to do is grab the front, and you want to keep the wires on the front up out of the way. So I usually grab the ones on both sides and I kind of hold them up here like this. And then on the back of the blaster, you take your pusher and you slide it into that guide. The thing that you need to be careful of here is that this gray pusher switch doesn't get pinched in anything as you slide the two halves together. So you slide the two halves together, and they should ultimately kind of click into place. And then you can secure the front to the back with 3/8 machine screws. Same thing on the other side. Okay, so that is the front and the back of the blaster put together. At the bottom of this inner guard piece where the guard meets the handle, there is a screw that goes in here, and that is a 3/4 inch machine screw. And then on the bottom of the handle, you put the battery cap. So the battery door fits in between this slot on the back of the handle. It's a little snug, so sometimes you have to kind of guide it into place. And then with a 1-inch machine screw, you go in from one side and it screws into the other. If for whatever reason this bothers your hand or whatever, you can go in from the opposite side as well. Don't tighten that too tight. There's not a lot of material right here. If you tighten it too tight, you risk breaking this little piece. Now once you get that together, you should be able to close it and hear a solid click. I went through and I redesigned this piece for the 2X so that the battery door holds much more secure when it's closed. Okay, so now we want to go ahead and finish wiring up the inside of the blaster. So grab all the remaining items in your electronics bundle. This should include the 2 PCB boards, one of them with the 2X screen on it, a purple and white wire, so that is the wire that goes between the DCP board and the back board. You have this red and black voltmeter adapter wire. This goes on the connection for what used to be the voltmeter, but this just adapts it to the 2X because the battery actually plugs directly into the screen, and you get a battery alarm when your battery gets low. Grab the DCP board. Now this goes so that the components are on the top of the board and it slides in to the front mount here. There are slots on the inside of this mount and you just want to slide the board in there, and once you get it down in place it should kind of click into place. So you have 2 power connections that come from your ESC bundle here. One of them has this bigger sort of connector on it, and then the other one has just a simple 2-pin connector. That power connection goes into the middle connector on this DCP board. And this particular board and all of the boards going forward, I am going to color code so you know which way it goes. But if that color code isn't there for whatever reason, the red wire goes on the right side of the blaster. Now we're going to take this DCP control wire, again this is the purple and the white wire, and this plugs into the left connector on that same board, such that the white wire goes towards the inside of the board. So that would be the right side of the blaster, and then the purple wire is towards the outside on the left of the blaster. And then that wire, like the gray one, feeds through that slot on the left side of the blaster. Okay, so now you have your two connections from your ESCs that ultimately feed back to the board that the screen sits on. So these two wires are the orange, red, and brown wires. These could alternately be like white, red, and black, but in most cases they are orange, red, and brown. And then you find your ESC splitter wire. In this case, this is white, red, and black. These two connections can slide in that slot on the left side of the PCB mount. Okay, and then once you slide them through, then you can connect them to the splitter. And again, make sure that you are matching black to brown or black to black. Okay, if you start looking at your 2X board, you can see that it's labeled on the front of the board. So you have DCP, TRG, which is your trigger button, the ESCs, so this is where your ESC splitter will plug in, and that connection is color coded to match the ESC wires. On the bottom you have what is labeled VLT, so that's your voltmeter. That's where this voltmeter adapter is going to plug in. And then on the left side here you have PSHR and PSH front. Those are your two pusher switches. The PSHR, which is your rear pusher switch, is where your green pusher wire plugs into. The PSHF is your front pusher switch. This is where the gray pusher switch wire plugs into. The DCP connection is where your white and purple wire plugs into, and this plugs in so that the white is to the left side of the blaster. That's actually backwards from the front one. So again, the white goes towards the outside of the board or on the left side of the blaster. And then the TRG connection is your trigger, so that's your yellow wire plugs into there. This connector here, like this kind of female connector, slides through the slot on the right side of the PCB mount. This is a little tricky to get through all the way. You have to kind of coerce it to go through. Then once you get that in, you take your voltmeter adapter, match up the wires, plug that in, and then that plugs into this bottom port on the board. Now your ESC wires plug into this top port. Your green pusher switch goes into the bottom on that side, with the gray pusher switch wire directly above it. And then I leave these other two open just for a little bit. The back screen is made up of 3 different pieces. So you have this screen plate which goes around your screen, and then you have your knob and your counter reset button there. So first thing, you need to slide your knob onto the rotary switch here, and it should just slide right on. It shouldn't be too loose, it shouldn't be too snug, and as you turn it you should feel the detents on the rotary encoder as you spin it. And then you take your counter reset button and you kind of just slide it over the button on the bottom of the board there. And then this plate goes over the screen and over the knob and the button. And then there's actually 2 sets of slots on the back of the PCB mount here. So the one towards the front is what the 2X PCB goes in, and then the 2 rear slots are what this screen plate slides into. So that whole thing slides in as a single unit, and then you slide the screen plate and the PCB all in at once. And it should push down all the way so that it's flat against the top of the rear plate. Okay, so once you get the screen plate on, you still have the pusher motor wire kind of hanging out here. And we're going to start cleaning up all of these wires. So what I usually like to do is take your ESC wire, and again that's the black, red, and white one, and put it underneath in front of the pusher motor. And then you take the connector from your pusher motor wire and you slide it through the slot on the right side of the PCB mount. And then you can go ahead and plug it into the DCP board on the front. So if you look, that matches the color code the same way that the power wire does here. So again, the power wire and the motor both have the red wire towards the right side of the blaster. The DCP wire here has the purple wire towards the left side of the blaster. Now you have your green and your gray pusher switch wires kind of hanging out. I like to sort of fold and tuck them just down into the cavity there. And get them kind of out of the way. And then grab a zip tie. And what I like to do is take the slack from the ESC wire and I fold this back and forth. Usually only takes a couple times. You make a little bunch. Zip tie that together, cut off the excess, and then this tucks in, and be careful of these two upper connections on the 2X board. Make sure your bundle gets in underneath those. And that just kind of tucks in on the left side of the motor here. And once you get those in place, then you can connect your trigger wire and your DCP wire. And again, the white wire on the back board goes towards the left side of the blaster. And then kind of tuck the rest of the purple and white wire in and get everything nice and clean. And the same thing with your voltmeter adapter on the other side. At this point in time, you can just use all the space around that motor to kind of tuck your wires in and get them nice and neat. Cool, so we have everything wired up. We've got our wires kind of neat, so now we can actually go ahead, put a battery in, and start testing this out and make sure that everything is working well. Okay, so in order to put the battery in, this is a little different now that I've redesigned this battery cover. You really need to get in here and you need to kind of pry at the two tabs on either side of this cover. If you don't pull them out a little bit, you can't really get the cover open once you pull them out just a touch. You don't want to snap that whole piece. You just have to pull them out just enough so that the tabs will open up and the whole cover can open. And our battery slides in. Make sure the power switch is off, so that is with the circle pressed down. Insert the battery, the balance cable gets kind of bundled up in the back there. And when you close this again, you should hear the good click. Now, when we go ahead and we start this up, you should hear a couple things. You should hear a tone at the beginning, and then a single long tone from the ESCs. It's actually the motors making the sound, but for all intents and purposes, let's call it from the ESCs. And then because this is a 2X, you hear one additional tone that actually comes from the buzzer on the back of the 2X. Cool. Everything works really well. If we look at the back of here, we see the screen has come on. If you didn't see that, when you turn this on, you get a little bit of an FDL 2X splash screen. It should go right to your speed. Turn your knob and everything works. And then you should pull your trigger and your flywheel should spin. We can also put this in like full auto. Make sure that your pusher is operating properly. Everything looks really good. So last thing before we finish buttoning all this up, we're going to switch this around the other way. And when you pull the trigger, you want to watch and see which way the flywheels are spinning. This is a little tough to do sometimes. Okay, it looks like this one's spinning the right way, this is not. So like I mentioned before, if one of the flywheels is spinning the wrong way, all you have to do is swap any two wires and it will spin the opposite direction. Okay, now we can go ahead and we can put all the rest of the bits and pieces on here. We'll flip the blaster off again. Grab your electronics cover. So unlike the 2 Plus, where you have the voltmeter that goes in the back, this electronics cover can come on and off without a wire connected to the blaster. It's actually really nice. So this just slides over the top. And it should seat down without anything in the way. You just have to be careful that like none of your wires here are in the side channels along the blaster so that that cap can go in unhindered. There we go. And then the cap gets held in place with 2 3/8 machine screws that screw into the very top opening on the side panels here. It's not like securing it, it's just holding it in place. Okay, so these are the covers that go over the ESC wires. At this point in time, you can take these ESC wires and you can actually push them back into the back of the blaster. There should be enough room around the ESCs and everything that you can tuck these inside of those slots and have as little slack around these wires as possible. And then those secure with 2 3/8 machine screws and this screw up front. There you go. If you get that in there right, only that front screw is enough to hold that in place. So that is almost complete. The last thing that we need to do, if you remember before we put 2 screws in each motor, we need to put the 2 remaining screws. The thought there is if for whatever reason your motors aren't good and you need to swap them out, you can do that. Cool. So that completes your build of an FDL2X. The one remaining thing that you could do if you so choose is every FDL2 blaster, be it FDL2, 2 Plus, 2X, all come with a stock attachment point. And that just attaches to the back of the blaster there. And you use 4 1/2-inch machine screws just to secure it. If you got a stock with your blaster, it would be the same 1/2-inch machine screws. It would just replace this piece on the back of the blaster. Cool guys, well thanks for watching. This turned out to be a beautiful blaster. I really like all the hydro dipping and everything that Jackie did and this kind of ghost customization here. So I hope that this was helpful, and if you have any question you can contact us at projectfdl.com. But otherwise this has been your walkthrough assembling an FDL2X blaster. Thanks for watching guys.